Hi, it's KhoPhi here. Welcome to the whole show. In this video, I talk about how to authenticate your application if you're using Angular for the front end and then Django for the back end if you want to log in with, let's say, Google OAuth. Now, as a full stack dev, there are scenarios where you want to ship your own authentication process. You don't want to worry yourself much with that. You simply want to use something like an OAuth from one of the big platforms, Google, Facebook, whatever. And this should give you an overview of how the moving parts come together. And the entire video, the code it is based on, can be found on GitHub. So this repository contains the entire code used in this scenario. It's specific for Google, but the understanding and the principle should apply the same for the other OAuth providers. So the package I'm using in this case is called Angular X Social Login, and on the back end I have Django for the back end, Django REST framework for the API part of it, and we'll see how we log in the user using Google OAuth. Now, the entire flow should behave something like this. So on the front end, we have something like this, and then we can load up our Google. When we click on that, it should bring up a pop-up for us. The pop-up allows us to select the account we want to log in with. This is then sent back to Google, back to our backend. Our backend forwards it to Google. Google responds with the needed information to confirm that this user is valid. That is the whole process involved, and I want to walk you through how that happens. I started an article about that, but decided to just make a video to explain everything. So this is our application, and this is the code. So we have the front end and we have the back end. For the front end, we've created a basic Angular application, and in here at Authentication is where we've created the template for our Angular so that users can log in. Now with this, we are using this directive that comes from this package, and so you can read on how it works and whatnot, but essentially it comes with everything built in so that we can get this login designed for free. We click on that, the pop-up, all of that is built into it, so we have all for free. What we have to worry our head about is designing our page and whatnot, but for now it's just a simple page. You can see the code is actually Bootstrap, but I've not installed Bootstrap, just showing something here. With this, we get what we are seeing on the screen at the moment, and we can move on. When you tap on that, the directive does its magic and whatnot. What we care about is how we are going to use the directive. According to the documentation, we need to listen to the auth state of our social auth. So from the social auth service, which I import from the Angular X Social Login, when we listen on the state on the social auth, the auth state, when we get the response, we want to pass that response, the ID token on it, via our service. So I have a service here that is responsible for sending that token back to the endpoint, and this is sending it to our endpoint, which is located on that, and that is where Django is running. So Django is listening on this port, on that URL. On that URL is what we get to see here. So this is the URL. The get is showing this. It's going to take a post request in. Over here, when we send the ID token, so we send it with this. This is the payload that we are passing along and sending. You can check that from here, which we get to see with this payload. That is what is being sent. So when we click on this, we tap on the Google login, it sends a request to Google, the response comes back. That response we get is going to be in a form of an ID token. And so we polish the ID token. We basically take the ID token, pass it in to our service function here, and then that sends it to the backend on this URL. That URL is then taken in by the backend and then worked on. Before we move on to the backend, I've done a few configurations that you can also find in here. So my Google provider, I've provided that you can find that in your Google console. I am assuming you know about these things. If you don't know, I will hopefully put a link in the article to guide you on that, but it's outside the scope of this video. Get your token, get your environment variables, and your secret key and all of that from Google console. You blah, 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 you get to do all of that. You should have an idea if you're trying to do this thing. Anyway, with that out of the way, these are some of the configurations I had to do. So all of that you can find in the, the GitHub repository, or you can also find more details about it in their respective package. They have all the documentation there. You can see how I also use it in my repository here. So we send the requests, social login, we send it to this endpoint. So this endpoint is what we have here under main URLs, and then this is login Google. But typical Django project, this is the entry point, and so we have this which points to the main URLs, and the main URLs is that which then points to this function. This function, you can take your time and go through it. The only job it is doing is taking in the ID token that we send in from the front end, do a bit of gymnastics trying to send it to Google for validation and all of that. When that works out, we want to respond with this to the user. So if the user exists in the database, so we want to check, is it the first time the person is logging in? Using the OAuth, there's nothing like register or sign up. You make or log in. You just make the process seamless. So if it's their first time using it, you want to create an account for them. If they already have an account on the system, you just want to log them in. It's that smooth. So we want to check if the user exists in the database. If it doesn't, we create a new one. I'm doing a try simply because if I get this and it doesn't work out, if it doesn't exist, it's going to throw an error. Now, if the user does not exist, I go ahead to fill in some details and then create a new user while sending the same refresh token back to the endpoint, back to the front end. And so that is how we get this response back. And when we get the response back as response, this is something we get, and you on the front end can then store this and use it to communicate back with the front end anytime you want. And so in the local storage, we have these details stored here. We have the access token, we have the refresh token. The idea now is that the one in charge of the front end will be using this, will be passing along the details of the token that is received, as in the access token. Will be passing the access token along with any request that goes out for authenticated endpoints. And that is basically the overview of everything. The code is there. You can go through and then see how it's playing together. There's a lot of abstraction behind this, but if you're interested, you can go and read the source code for this package, how it puts all of that together, and you may want to fix and change things for yourself. But fundamentally, it handles the whole front-end part. All you care about is intercepting the auth state as presented here, send your token to the backend. The token also does its magic at the backend over here. So we have this token does its magic here, which is simply making an API call to Google to validate the token that was received. If that token is valid and then good, it means the user is legit, so we go ahead to do something with the response that we get. If all of that fails and in this attempt we get an invalid or something of that sort, something doesn't work out, value error or whatever, we just send back an invalid token. And so that's pretty much it. That's the overview for this. Let me know if you have any questions. You can leave it in the comment section. You can also raise the issue on the repository there on GitHub, and I'll be happy to take a look. But fundamentally, that's all we are doing, and the same thing will apply to if you are using other providers as outlined in here. So thanks for joining me in this one. My name is KhoPhi. Hope to talk to you in the next one.